Ever wonder how many startups get venture capital investment? How it even happens? What are some key points to consider before looking to get venture capital? Is it even needed? Welcome to Business Not 101, a podcast that explores the uncommon side of business. I'm your host, Olivier Bousette. In today's Founders interview series, we're joined by Bobbi Bidochka, founder of Imagine Ideation, where we discuss sexual wellness, scaling your nonprofit, venture capital, and so much more. Hi, Bobbi. How you doing?
I'm good, Olivier. How are you?
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you for joining us on Business Not 101.
My pleasure.
So let's get right into it. First question, 60-second business pitch.
Okay, right on. So I'm the founder of Imagine Ideation. We move ideas forward through ecosystem diplomacy, facilitation, and consultation. We focus on social enterprise, nonprofits, and charities to help them find money and restructure their operations to scale up. It's not a word that's often used in those areas. I'm also a venture associate for Tandem Launch, which is Canada's premier deep tech incubator VC hybrid fund, and author of Sexual Intelligence in Business.
Excellent. That's like a lot of different fields all in one. So that's pretty amazing. One of the questions I always, when I read up about your company was, what is ecosystem diplomacy?
So often different sectors speak within themselves. So, industry folks talk to industry folks, and finance people talk to finance people, and academics talk to academics, but they don't talk to each other enough, cross-disciplinary and cross-section. And so some of the events and meetings that we help people move their ideas forward is by bringing multiple stakeholders to the table and help them to translate. Finance folks and academics don't speak the same language necessarily, and so we help them to figure out how to talk to one another and move all the ideas forward through facilitation. And so it's bringing together a full ecosystem, and it doesn't matter the sector; it's the same maps onto all sectors.
That's really interesting. That's a big scope to bring together. And I wonder, and obviously because you have such a unique background, and one of the things that struck me, and it was something that pops up a lot in the posts on LinkedIn as I follow you, is the sexual well-being. Like, could you talk to us about that? How does that play into your role as a founder of a business that does consultancy as well as a venture capitalist, and now also this other?
Well, in multiple ways. So from say from a global or workplace business perspective, I mean, sex and love and relationships are the number one motivator of all human behaviors. And so everything sort of trickles down from that. And right now, because in this post-Me Too era that we're in, understanding your own sexuality and how your approach and your body and your lifestyle, how that actually does affect your business and in the workplace, because it does. So sort of pretending like we can leave that at home in the bedroom is actually incorrect. And so it's important that we get a better grip as a society on, sort of remove the taboo around sexuality, discussing it, because I think that this is a symptom of the larger problem of sexual harassment.
That's interesting. And so when you're dealing with that, and this is part of who you are in your business life, how does it affect the other parts of it? Does it ever have a negative effect? Do you feel like you have a roadblock because of it? Because I know a lot of people tend to they don't necessarily associate the sex industry as part of the mainstream industry and well-being and sexual well-being.
You don't have to do that. You don't have to relate to the sex industry as you want to call it. I mean, there's many facets to sort of what's going on in the adult or sex world per se. And so there's, your own personal approach to it. Some people, there's a good number of, coaches out there right now that, when you are sort of blocked sexually, you can also, that sort of maps on to being blocked in your business as well. And so if if you can communicate well in the bedroom, it's more likely you'll communicate well in business as well. So these things everything's sort of linked. And that's, when you think about a systems thinking type of approach, these aren't segregated things that you put in a box over here. They're all part of the body and the system and how you interact with people. And then there's the aspect of you can actually use your sexual energy to do better at business. And that doesn't mean you go around having sex with everybody at the workplace. It just means that when you understand how to harness your sexual energy, much in the way that, say the flow state. I'm not you're sure if you're familiar with the flow state, but you can be more productive and more creative when you learn how to channel that energy.
That's really okay. That's very complex, but there's so many levels to it. So this is the first time I actually sort of bring this up because you're the first person that actually in that industry. But I find it so interesting because how does it affect, or does it not at all, what you're doing there affect the other parts of your business career, such as a founder? Did you feel that you were able to take a lot of that, what you've learned through the sexual well-being, and implement it into your own business, and you had success with it? And how would you tell people like, yeah, this is something you should incorporate or look at in your
I mean,
everyday?
absolutely, 110%. This is why I wrote the book, because I realized how I was using my sexual energy. Because people, like, I do a lot of things. I named a few things, but I do actually more than that. And the way I can do that, because I always get the question, oh my God, you do so many things. How do you have the energy? Plus, I have two kids, na na na. And it's like, because I am channeling my sexual energy, it's like I get an extra gas in the tank. I have that added energy level. I mean, a lot of energy is derived from desire, sexual or otherwise. And so, instead of trying to sort of separate those two, when you put them together, you just get that extra energy, extra boost. I mean, it's amazing. And I wouldn't be able to do all this if I didn't have that.
Okay. Is it where did you learn that? Because it's not something like, again, it's to me, it's something that's separate from my business world. It's not something I ever think about during
Mhm.
business. So maybe I'm just unique. I don't know. I don't know if
Yeah,
everybody
you're probably
is.
like most people, because that's, society's telling you you shouldn't think like that, and you should only sex is for the bedroom and nowhere else. But it does get carried along in all of your relationships. And I just stumbled on it when I was in my early 20s. I just noticed that when I was at work, and if I had a crush on someone, or whatever, that all of a sudden I just felt more energy, and then I'd be like, man, I'm killing it here. And when you are comfortable with your sexuality, this emits a frequency that people find attractive. And I don't mean attractive like I want to get with you kind of attractive. It just means like that it's it feels good. It's not explicit. It's just that people, and it helps you to bond with people when you have sexual energy and oxytocin. And when you sort of share that energy with people, oxytocin is the bonding chemical. So you just build more genuine, stronger bonded relationships. And in business, it's very important because people do business with those they know and those they trust. And when you're authentic and people notice that and they feel it from you. I'm not saying you have to sit there and talk about sex all day. That's you don't need to do that at all.
Yeah. That's really interesting. Yeah, I always think about personal character and charisma as being sort of the driving force when you're meeting people, and certainly in either in sales or in personal branding. So, any major roadblocks when you were starting your business that either that you felt like this is something that was part of the industry, or something that you discovered because of your character in the industry?
So, like, as far as Imagine Ideation goes, there was no major roadblocks, except for I was waiting to start it until I found the right business partner. And so you could say co-founder if you like. So that I need someone to be accountable to. I'm not going to be alone and doing it. Just isn't That's not how I work. I need accountability. I need to be responsible for people and deadlines. And so when I found the right person where we just had the right complementary mindset, then it was like, okay, it's go time now. This is great. Off we go. And then, things were going very well. COVID happened. We pivoted a little bit, and now we're doing even better. We're a bit of unique because we keep our if you look at our websites, it's a little bit vague, and purposely vague, so that we can always keep adjusting and take on clients that we like, so that we're not pigeonholed, and we'll just carry on like that, so that we could do what we feel like doing, and we're somehow have been lucky enough to be able to be choosy.
Yeah. Okay. So, did you pivot when you pivoted your idea? Was it something like, well, I had idea A, I was going down path A, and then all of a sudden I flipped completely to path C, or was it a minor pivot just because of COVID that you would now have to do everything virtually, like this?
Well, I mean, most of our model is event centric. So obviously, anybody who was doing any type of had to shift during COVID. So of course, we shifted to some virtual events. but also in the service of early days of COVID, we were just offering all of the people that we knew that were a social enterprise or charity or nonprofit who needed help. We were just jumping in and just helping people anyways. And then it just sort of gravitated towards, well, we need help raising money, we need help getting money, we need help writing grants. Okay, well then we just started doing it, and people were loving it, and then we're getting paid for it, and so it just kind of went like that.
Okay. Okay. So that's true because when I was looking up your website and looking at your profile, that wasn't showing up as part of what the business sort of overview was. So that's really interesting. So you guys really pivoted towards funding, which is a major issue for a lot of startups is funding.
Mhm.
And I find it's even harder for certain people, obviously women, people of color, it's even harder. Do
Mhm.
you find that it's something that you still see a lot of today, that it's something, a problem for women to get funding and women, small businesses to get funding? Is it something you see certainly from your venture capitalist side?
I mean, from the people that I know and the people in Tandem Launch, it's there is does not seem to be a particular bias towards women or not. Certainly, we don't have enough women in Tandem Launch, despite our bending over backwards efforts trying to get more women. I mean, there's only so many people in the pipeline right now. So, that will change over time as we get more, women in technical disciplines at, in academia, and then they graduate, and, then they can get out there. But I mean, it's in the community itself. Like I do a lot of fundraising, and, VC after VC after VC, when you look at their team, it's just like, just oodles of white guys. It's the white guy after white guy after white guy. And sometimes they try to pop up a woman up in the, to the higher levels, even though like their HR, their marketing, so it looks like you don't have to scroll down so far to find a woman on your team. But, that's it's an issue. It's definitely an issue.
Yeah, a lot of people brought that up. It's something. It's a bit of a weird industry. A lot of people sort of have negative experiences with venture capitalists and certainly angel investment. It is something that's very white centric. I would
Mhm.
definitely agree
And
from
not to
what I've.
mention the fact that a lot of the female founders are doing sort of femtech, sex tech type of industries that men don't value either. So it's like a
That's
double
interesting.
whammy. Yeah.
Yeah. And so when you look at it, I guess from the point of view of Tandem Launch, how do you guys feel like you can change this? Is this something that you guys are working actively on changing or
Oh,
to
yes.
help people?
Yes, we actively, search out women, like, literally hunt them down through LinkedIn or through, academia, and reach out to them directly, because they don't often come to us, so we go get them. We have initiatives in place. I mean, our CEO takes this very seriously. He's written blog after blog after blog after blog about it. He bends over backwards in every possible way to try to keep connected to the female tech community and encouraging them. And then we have, since I arrived at Tandem Launch, now we have the Young Women's Tech Leadership Cohort, where we run just to give some young women the idea of what it might be like to start a startup, because they often won't take the same leap as a man would. Women make decisions differently, and they consider different things. Like, they know they're probably going to have babies one day, so when is that going to happen? And so they consider these things, whereas men often do not. And so we also, we do International Women's Day. We did a special panel podcast to try to encourage women. So I've got another one in the pipe that's going to come out in July. We're running the Young Women's Cohort again in August. We also have a social entrepreneurship program that I started for, nonprofits and social enterprise, to sort of get the benefits of all the knowledge that Tandem Launch has, to be able to help their businesses grow and scale as well. And so we just try our best to share our expertise. We give talks. I give info sessions at universities. Like, we just do everything we could possibly think of.
That's really good, and that's I think that's super important, and it really lacks out there. And I try to help out as much as I can, but it's really hard to find such initiatives that you guys are creating. So that's really incredible. So hats off to that.
Thank you.
Um, so taking it from there, now if we're looking at it, and this is obviously because you guys are really focused, I think, on the educational side, the higher tech women entrepreneurs. If somebody's starting up a business, anybody at any level, how would you suggest that they go off and get noticed by venture capitalists, or generally speaking, such as in marketing?
Well, I mean, first thing, it depends what your startup is. That's the thing. So sometimes social media works well and sometimes it doesn't. It depends what your product on. Like for example, my company, Imagine Ideation, I don't do social media because I don't have to. It's all referral business. So doing stuff on social media, I don't need it. I have a lineup of clients. And so because it's relationship based. So it depends what your startup is and what you're selling. And then you choose the right platform to go about promoting your business. What I see a lot of startups is they don't do enough, posting on LinkedIn or Twitter. Like all of VCs are on Twitter. So just knowing that right off the bat, you need to be active on Twitter and make yourself known by not just posting, but commenting and participating in the conversation. I find a lot of startups feel like, well, they're heads down doing like, their startup stuff and making their product, and that's great, which you have to do that. But you also have to start communicating and making those links before you need them. The key in hiring and the key in venture capital is making friends before you need them. Yeah. So you want to start doing that ahead of time.
That's really a great point. Yeah. And so you're saying LinkedIn. So that's new. I didn't think of that. So I'm on LinkedIn, but whatever. I'm not very super active on it. But so you're saying venture capitalists are actually looking at LinkedIn as a primary source and sorry, not LinkedIn, Twitter as one of the key aspects to find new companies to
No, I don't
invest.
think they're looking for deal flow, but they're all there. They do the most activity you'll get from a VC, like actively posting and actively engaging with the community. It's on Twitter. They don't really need to search social media for deal flow because they have enough people approaching them. There's enough startup approaching VCs that they don't really need to spend too much time actively searching. But also, they find their way to people through other VCs. If you've already been funded by one of their friend VCs, like they talk to each other as well. And then there's the Crunchbase and BetaKit, and making sure that if you can get an article written about you somewhere where people are looking, that's great too. That's a bit harder to do, but having a really great website that describes what you do, and participating on social media if that's appropriate. But you do have to, like, fundraising is a hard game. It's really hard and it takes a really long time. So you need to plan in advance. You need to connect with everybody on LinkedIn. They're all there. You need to make friends, and you need to also target. Like, don't approach a VC who doesn't match your investment thesis with. And so going through the grind, there's thousands. There's thousands of them. They all have money and they want to spend it on you.
Okay, that's like so much to take away from that. So you suggested somebody to say, okay, look, you need to create your profile and to really make sure that your profile is clear, so that a VC can look at it and say, okay, I get who that person is and what's their aim and what they're trying to build.
Mm-hmm.
And that has to be very specific and not to go out there and sort of like just spray everybody with, here's my pitch, because that's not going to work.
It just you'll waste your time and you'll waste their time. You're better off to start before you need it, which means like day one. Start building your list, start reaching out, ask for advice if anybody's willing to talk to you. Make friends before you need their money. And because also a lot of VCs, they're looking for the right team. The team is number one usually, then the product or the tech is second, because you can have a great product, but if you have a crappy team, it won't work, right? So also having a very good slide deck is super important, and I see literally hundreds of those and most of them suck.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of companies actually joining that sort of venture to create slide decks for people because they realize it's really hard to do. I've built a few of them myself, and yeah, you think that like in your mind when you see them, it's like, oh, this is the best, and then show it to somebody, and they're like, eh, it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's difficult. It's really difficult.
Yeah.
So build your presence, build your brand, and then really sort of target the people that you're going to connect with. Move from there, create your database. So turns into like a massive networking and really connection
It
based.
is. And you know
So
what? Shouldn't cost you a dime. It's all sweat equity.
yeah, well, that's the hard part, right? But where would somebody start off with? So somebody's like, I'd say starts off today and they're saying, okay, I've listened to this podcast. I'm going to jump into this.
Mhm.
Where do they look? Who do they look for? Do they just look for venture capitalists? Because you end up in a sort of, that's a muddled world at best. And it's not easy to identify what kind of venture capitalist you should go. So if is there a way to look at it and say, this is where you should start with this level of people or this person, or should you just go off at the CEO of that company and just ping them?
No, so you wouldn't go right to the CEO, and generally they're not considered a CEO. They're considered like a general partner or managing partner. But Crunchbase is the best place to start. Get yourself a little subscription to that, and it has mostly everybody there that's active and even inactive. They have a query function. Make yourself a little export CSV, and you just start from there. And eventually, like they have good descriptions. It's a grind. You have to run it, look them up, read their website, find out who's who on their team, make sure you fit, reach out to them on LinkedIn, like a connection request, wait for that connection request, unless they have an email on their website. So every now and again, sometimes they do, but not always. But you have to actually read each team's profile because each person sort of has their expertise, and you're better off. You'll spend you're more likely to get in if you target the one person that has the expertise in your background. And so you have to do the research, and then you have to reach out, and then you have to repeat this 3,000-4,000 times.
Yeah, don't sugarcoat it there. Yeah, 3,000-4,000 times. There you go. That's a lot to take in, though. That's pretty interesting, and something I never thought of. Crunchbase. That's really cool. You mentioned something earlier, saying your team. Is that always necessary? What happens if you have a founder by themselves? Is that always sort of said, "Nix, we don't take"?
Rarely do VCs invest in solo founders. Very rarely.
Okay,
And by time you can't. It's not a scalable business if you're by yourself. And the chances of you being able to get to the point where you're ready for VC funding alone, that would be a rare case. You need a team.
okay.
I can't see why you wouldn't have a team.
Yeah, and it's something that we've always said at all our meetups and all our events. But when we talk to startups, we tell people like, "Hey, you know what? No matter what, really need to have a co-founder, a couple of co-founders. It's always helpful, even if you're doing a little business, even e-commerce. It is super helpful. It's very difficult to find, and certainly today, even worse with, as you know, even dating's almost impossible. So I can only imagine finding a co-founder.
Yeah.
It's really difficult. So this is something you've said. That's it. That's a number one priority. You need to create your team around you.
Yeah. I mean, it's when you're going to receive VC funding, it means you're about to scale. And if you haven't demonstrated that you can work together with people up to that point right away, like they don't, it's a bad signal. It would
Very true.
depend on how early you are. Like if you're really, really early and you have IP and it's something that's super magical, it would just be, I mean, that would be just such a rare case. I can't even think of a scenario where I've seen that.
Very interesting. Cool. Yeah, we figured it. So when somebody's about to do this, is branding really important? Is there sort of the look and sort of the concept of the company, the whole branding, something that as VCs you would look at as a founder yourself? Was it something that was important, or is it something that that can be built later on?
And it depends what people think about branding. Like it's the branding in the grand marketing sense, the whole big branding thing. You don't need a whole lot of that at first. You need a decent company name. You need a decent website. You need to have a social media presence. You need to understand what is your product or product line and where your company is going. But you don't need fancy branding. You don't need like hats and t-shirts and things like that. It's you should put a little thought into it. I mean, I see a lot of startups actually, their name is weird, have weird names for some reason that people can't pronounce. So you should shop around your name to make sure that people in other cultures and in other areas, especially if you have plans on being an international company, what does this word mean in other places? But that's not branding. That's just hopefully common sense. You need a website, you need a deck, pick some colors, like just go for it. It doesn't need to be a whole branding exercise, right? In the same way, like, what is it when you do real branding, what you're doing is if people see our logo or if people see our product, how do they feel? It's how are they, Tom's say, for example, that when you go to their website, you can see how they're trying to, make it feel like a social enterprise. Their branding of the percentage of the shoes buy shoes from them. Someone, in an underprivileged area gets shoes. So that's all branding. You don't need that in the early days.
That's true. Okay, that's a great point. It's also about the story. Do you feel that's really important? Is the background story, or
Critical. It's everything. Your
okay? There,
story
that's a
is
big part then.
yes,
Okay.
massive. If you
Okay.
can't tell a story, it means you're not selling. And if you're not selling, you won't get any clients. You won't get any VCs. Nobody going to talk to you.
Okay. So the story is really important, which is part of branding, but that's the most important part. And you were talking about the slide deck, and something that, again, as I said earlier, I'm not very good at. What are some of the key things people should look at when building a slide deck? Is there like, if you have 100 pages, because I've seen some people build 100 pages, and I think like I would never read that. Is there a 3 pages or one long page you're good with? What is the key things that you guys look at in your experience?
So it does vary. So again, I'm sorry, these aren't really concise answers, but it depends, right? So it depends on your audience. The deck you have to sell to customers is not the same deck you would send to VC. It's not the same deck that you would send. So it all depends on who is looking at it and how technical it needs to be. So there are some VCs who really want to see what is the tech behind the tech. They want to understand it. Other VCs don't care that much about it. Just tell me about the ROI. And so you have to have probably a good 10 to 20 versions of your deck, depending on who is the audience.
Okay.
So, yeah. So, but it does need to have it all needs to have a narrative, an arc of, what is the problem you're trying to solve? Here's our solution. Here's why it's great. Here's why we're better than others. And here's why you should invest, or here's why you should buy. So it needs to have a nice story flow, and it needs to be able to resonate with people when they don't even realize it's resonating. Having some kind of emotional side of things is important. So for example, one of our companies, they have a software for drones that can be like long flight drones. Starting out with something like, there are forest fires. All these forest fires, we could stop them. We could save money. We could save lives. You start with that story, and then you go on. Well, how? So the problem is this: cost this much money to monitor forest fires. Then we solve that problem. Here's how our tech works. Here's the product. Here's what you're going to get. Here's why you should invest. Here's the numbers. So it needs to have a nice arc.
So full storyline. And
Mhm.
you actually mentioned also the money it's going to make, like what it costs today versus what when we do it, XYZ answer of whatever product or solution, we are going to save the person money, or are you looking to say we're going to make this money? What's more attractive? We're going to fix this problem by saving people this money, and out of that, we're going to make this percentage ourselves. Is that something that should be key, or should it be just about the story, the product, and our
It needs
target
to be
audience?
both, right? So you need to be telling, say, so we're talking about VCs here. You need to be telling the VC why customers will buy or why they are buying. So they need to understand what is the problem you're solving for that sector and how you're solving that problem. Sometimes you've just got a brand new tech that people can, or brand new product that people can use, or you're saving the money, or something like that. So it just depends on what is your angle. It's something's more efficient, something's more environmental, something like that. So like a car is a car, but now the Tesla, you save money on gas, you're contributing to a positive environment. Maybe the car's a little bit more expensive, but you get all these other things, and that's why you should buy it, as opposed to but also the VCs need to know, if you invest this amount of money, this is how much, this is the ROI. And they won't disclose that on the deck, but they gives you percentages, like ideas of where the company's going on growth, projections, estimates, and then they can get an idea of what's good and what's not.
That's a great point. And so do typically, and I'm really interested in this, typically do people show less information that they're afraid that VCs will take that information somewhere else, or are they very open in your experience? And if people are very open in their deck and giving all the information, are they more likely to get funding versus ones who are more protective of of the information, the data that they're holding because they're afraid of it going somewhere else? Does that happen a lot?
There's a few camps. So Chatham Lodge in particular, all of our companies are from IP. So it doesn't matter what we share. We're already. Secondly, for those entrepreneurs who have an idea and they're really afraid to tell people about it because they're afraid someone's going to steal it. If you don't have IP, it doesn't matter. At some point, when you get out there, people can still copy you. So you can tell people now, or you can tell people later. But it's really more about first past the post. Like, how many burger joints are there in the world? There's a ton. You can still start another burger joint right now and do really well. All you have to do is do it well and do it better than the others. So in that case, if you don't think you're doing it well and you're not doing it better, you probably shouldn't be starting your company in the first place, because you probably will waste your time and everybody else's. And the VCs will see that right away. Also, If they ask for information, so some have a different strategy, usually have a deck that's, they call it a teaser deck, where it gives them just enough information to know I'm interested in learning more. Because yeah, you don't want to publicize, every single detail. Then they usually ask for the full deck. So then you send them a full deck, has numbers in it, stuff. It's called confidential. They're not supposed to share it. Most people don't. They might share it amongst their colleagues because they aren't like actively considering the investment. And if they want to do their own due diligence, which, when they do go into the data room, why would you want to stop them from having information? Like, you have to disclose everything in the data room anyways. You have to disclose everything before an
Yeah.
investor is going to invest. So
Yeah, no, that's good to know. And there's a lot of fear because this is something new to a lot of people if they're joining. It's not like a seasoned entrepreneur who's already gone fund funding 20 times. They're not going to be listening to this. They already know what they're doing. They're beyond that point. It's definitely somebody who just starts off. One more question I have on that: if somebody is pre sales, that means they haven't gone and get any customers yet. They have a lot of users, but they haven't sold anything. Are they a good fit to start looking for funding, even pre-seed, or should they just go for crowdfunding or trying to sort of bootstrap the whole project until they get customers to get
mm,
really in front of VCs? What's the best option?
well, there's a misconception that every entrepreneur startup must seek out VC funding. You don't have to do that. You can bootstrap, and you can do it on your own. So it really does depend on what is on the table. So there are certain startups out there that get acquired from certain companies very quickly as soon as they're heard of, and then they get funded. This is very, very, very rare in that case. And so you do have to demonstrate that people want your product to some degree or not. So it depends what you mean by, if people are using your product but they're not paying for it, then how do you, like Facebook, we don't pay to use Facebook, but how is Facebook going to make money? If you're going to invest in Facebook, you want to know, well, if your users aren't paying you, how are you going to get paid? So you need to have a solid plan, but you really, really, really need to have either some customer validation, like a customer saying, if you get up to this point, I will buy your product, because maybe they need to scale. It's like, Walmart wants my product, but I can't actually sell to Walmart until I have the scalable business that can produce my products in the amounts that they need.
Hmm.
So that's it. But then Walmart would send you a letter saying, when you get that, I will buy your products.
Yeah, letter of intent to purchase. So
Yeah.
that's really interesting, and I agree with you 100% on that. And what I'm taking away is that you're better off, no matter what, to either have a paying customer or have that path so clearly written out that whoever's buying into it feels 100% confident. Like tomorrow, you can get a
Yeah.
check from somebody.
Yeah.
Okay, that's important. I think a lot of people create ideas and then they go and sort of sell the idea because they need the financing to go and build the idea, but without viable customers or already a list of customers or people already on a waiting list to purchase, it becomes more difficult. So
I mean, I
that's
know
a great
people
point.
have this problem, like, well, I need the money in order to build the thing, but you have to have some skin in the game too, right? And so, yeah, that does eliminate some entrepreneurs. Well, I don't even have a dollar to my name. Well, then you do what I did, because I work a full-time job and I fund myself up until I raise revenue. So by actual customers. And so if you don't put skin in the game, why would anybody else?
Yeah. Well, that's a great point because that's something that people don't talk about. We have sort of this vision of what entrepreneurship is. You go off and get venture capitalists to give you millions of dollars and you buy a Ferrari and then you start your business. And I think
No,
that's completely like, Hollywood, but not real.
not real. It happens
Yeah.
once in a million, but that is not the pathway.
Okay. That's really good. I love it. I love it. This is the most I ever got into venture capitalists yet from a guest. So those are a lot of information to take in. I think we kind of covered everything up to here, and now I get to ask my fun questions, which are my rapid round questions. One I always start off with, and I think it's really important, is your take on your favorite book that every entrepreneur or anybody who's about to become an entrepreneur should read.
Oh, Robert Cialdini's Persuasion.
So, next question. How do you decompress? Because obviously now you have your own business, you have all these other priorities as well, being a mom. How do you decompress?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I guess I go to sleep at night. And every now and again, I'll masterclass. I like watching masterclass. So that I just like learning. So I find learning is a very, yeah, I don't have much desire to sort of sit and do nothing. I do like to do stuff. So, but walking in nature is great. You know, hanging out with my husband on the deck. Like yesterday was great weather. So that was nice. But mostly it's the learning. I love learning. I love reading, masterclass. So when I'm doing that stuff, I'm trying to meditate more and do yoga and stuff like that. So there's that too. But yeah, no, I don't have like a go-to thing. Just a
Yeah,
bunch of things.
that's so funny. Your decompression is exactly like your business world. It's like so many different projects. It's like, it's not like just a glass of wine while sitting on the couch watching TV. It is so many sides to it. It's interesting.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. I tried yoga, but I find it so difficult, certainly during COVID, to do it by myself in front of a TV trying to look and so on. I said, okay, forget it. I'll wait. Yeah.
I think I'm more like an octopus, right? I just have 8 arms and all of them got to do stuff.
I'm more like a rock. I sort of sit in one position and try to move around a little bit. All right. How do you keep organized? Obviously, you have so many things going on and so many high-end, pieces that have to be put together. So what is your number one organization?
Well, I use every tool in the toolbox. So get back to the octopus. So I have my email, and I use all the features that allows me to do color coding, setting reminders, tagging things. So I use all of that. I also make sure to keep my inbox organized. When I keep my inbox organized, then I know it's also a to-do list, because when I'm finished with something, I file it and everything's filed very systematically. On my desktop and my computer, everything is I like consistent naming conventions so that all of my files are filed organized. I don't have one of those desktops where people are like, have like 1,000 different icons. I don't have a bunch of tabs open on my browser. I have only what I need open, just so that I can focus on what I'm doing. But I am also old school. I take notes and then I convert them into each respective book by topic. Then I have sticky notes. So I do
I
it.
love it.
I do a bunch of it so that make sure that I'm just not missing a thing. Even still, I miss something every now and again, but it's pretty rare.
That's excellent. So I feel like you're somebody who journals. Am I right?
I do journal. I mean, I've got just stacks of books.
That's
So
it. That's
I
it.
journal my notes, my thoughts. I mean, these are their to do, their thoughts, their contacts, their ideas, their everything in there by
Yeah.
topic.
I can tell. I'm a journaler too, so I write everything I have to do, and I sort of create my feelings for the day, and I sort of hash it out, and then I just go on, and I feel that helps a lot. Well, I want to thank you so much. This was such an interesting conversation and an interesting interview. I mean, I learned so much, so I love it.
Thank you so much.